Welcome back to the Chess Geek channel. I'm thrilled to be embarking on a new journey on My 60 Memorable Games by Bobby Fischer. One of the reasons that I'm really excited to be starting this book is because it's a game collection book, which means we're going to see 60 of the best games and they're going to be fully annotated. Now, previously in our earlier masterclasses, we looked at very specific techniques, right? We looked at very specific openings, technical endgames, common motifs of attacking and positional play, but we've never really looked at a game collection book. So with this book here, we're going to be able to combine all of the other very technical skills that we've learned into one full game, and you're going to see how all of those earlier ideas that we covered combine and work together into one beautiful, complete, and cohesive game. Now, right before we begin, I do want to touch on how I recommend you get the most from this masterclass. First of all, I am a true believer in using a real 3D board. So I recommend setting up a 3D board with pieces and with every video playing through the moves for yourself. I do that, by the way, for the first time when I read this book. With every single game, I set up the pieces and I actually play it on a 3D board. I think that that gives you the most fruitful experience, so I highly recommend you do that if it's possible. But secondly, I also recommend you purchase this book for yourself. Of course, I'm not going to look at every annotation. There's a lot of text, a lot of helpful ideas that are shared through words in this book, so I highly recommend, if possible, again, you purchase the book and you have that reference point as well. You can watch the video and then read the book, or vice versa. Either way, that will give you the most beneficial experience. So with that out of the way, let's jump in to our first game that we're looking at in the video today, and this is Bobby Fischer with the white pieces playing against Sherwin. This is from the New Jersey Open Championship. It was played in 1957. Let's go ahead and begin. So we see the Sicilian, and immediately after knight to f3 and e6, we have the move d3 here. And white immediately defines the structure. More common is d4, going for the open Sicilian, where the game becomes very hectic and chaotic, and there's less definition, right? This can get into a ton of different positions, a ton of different pawn structure. By playing d3, we're really quickly setting up where we're going to attack, right? Lining up the pawns towards the king side is a good indication, and with the help of f4 and h4, white is going for a kingside attack. That is where white will play in these sort of positions. And similarly, black, with the help of b5, a5, b4, etc., is going for a queenside attack. And so you're immediately going to see that in the game, and this move d3 really starts that up. So we have in this position knight to c6 and g3. You have to get this bishop out, and okay, bishop e2 is rather passive, so g3 and fianchetting the bishop seems very logical. And indeed, that is exactly what happened. Bishop e7, castles, and castles. And in this position, knight b d2 was played, which is super common in these sort of structures. Yes, the knight on c3 does have a couple of benefits. It controls the center. It also doesn't block in the bishop, but there's also a lot of benefits for the knight on d2. Namely, you keep open the possibility of going c3 and d4 and taking over the center with pawns. Also, the knight is super flexible. You can certainly imagine this very typical maneuver, rook e1, knight f1, knight e3. The knight can come to b3 in some cases, and of course c4 is the very obvious placement for the knight. Even, as we'll see in this game, this idea of going e5 and then maybe the knight coming to e4 is possible. So the knight on d2 is a very flexible way to play, where you're not committing it to c3, you're leaving open a ton of possibilities, both for your pawns and for your knight. Now rook b8 is played, which is rather common as well. You're getting out of this long diagonal and setting up the attack that I was talking about with b5 and b4. However, one of the things you can notice here, and this becomes even more abundantly clear after rook e1 and d6, is that black is going for a very passive setup in this position. Earlier, and even in this position, the move d5 was the most natural, right? You put the pawn on e6, and you try to strike in the center and combat the center that white has. And similarly, after d6 is played, the move c3 is played, and here b6, again, b5 was possible, a much more aggressive setup. And so by playing the more passives b6 and d6 moves, black is going for a more solid, safe, but therefore less ambitious setup, and white tries to punish this by going for a quick all-out attack. And the game takes a very exciting turn for this reason. Now, one of the things I will mention is with the move b5, you are exposing your pieces a bit more. Generally, if you play in a more ambitious style, that also comes with more risks. And for example, one of the variations here is d4, b4, and again, if black goes for a crazy attack with b5, b4, well, white is also getting some significant play in. For example, takes is a huge mistake here in view of pawn takes f6, you take the knight, and here the very nice knight takes, also exposing the bishop and the attack with the pawn. This is in a way a fork, and you are winning a piece. So there was some risks to playing super aggressively, but of course black could have avoided this. They could have played b5, and in many of these positions after d4 or after e5, they could have made some alternative moves that would have been good for them. So in general, black was going for a more passive setup, and because of that, white strikes d4, queen c7, and now e5, right? The way that you defeat passivity is you go for an aggressive attack, and this is what is illustrated in this position with this move d4 followed by e5. Okay, so after the move e5, knight d5 was played here, and in this position, pawn takes was played. You could have also gone for c4 in this position, and as it turns out, the tactics do work out here well for white. After knight b4, you could either take the pawn. In fact, you kind of need to take. If you go a3, then knight d3 is very, very dangerous. First, you can take, and the idea is there's a subtle difference. If queen takes, now after a3, knight d3, there's this move knight e4, hitting the queen, hitting the knight. This is great for us. And alternatively, they can take with the bishop, but again, you can play knight e4 in these positions with some initiative. a3 can come next, and we get some good play in the center of the board. So this would have been a great option for white, going c4 and trying to continue to push around the opponent's pieces. Instead, white decided to take here, which is also a very logical move, very similar in nature. We're trying to disturb the peaceful piece placement for black, and in this position, bishop takes was played. But now, after knight e4, it gets very, very scary. There's already certain ideas. c4 is, for example, still very powerful now. So c4 was played here by black to stop that from being a possibility. But this allows this nice move, knight takes d6 here. And the whole point is after queen takes d6, notice that now the queen and rook are lined up on this diagonal. Now this doesn't seem like such a big issue because this knight defends that. But one of the important ideas when it comes to attacking is to attack on multiple fronts. And so what you're going to see here is in the next couple of moves, white makes a lot of attacking ideas against this king. And it actually starts right now with knight g5. But the main reason that this attack is so effective is because there's this other lingering threat of bishop f4 winning the rook here. And so when you have these dual threats, usually you're going to get a much more effective attack because it's going to be a lot more overwhelming for the opponent to defend against all of your threats. And this is why this idea of trading was so effective. And you're going to see this very clearly in a moment. So knight g5 was played. There's already ideas of queen h5, perhaps queen c2, setting up some attacks. Now notice that h6 is possible here, and for me this was the most natural move, but this doesn't really make much of a difference. White still gets a pleasant position after knight e4, let's say queen d7, and in this position there's always these ideas of attacking with, for example, queen g4 and bishop h6. One of the downsides of playing h6 is that this becomes a hook. You have to be careful of f5, so you can't play queen g4 immediately, but this is one of the various ideas in the position. There's still obviously the two bishop advantage, and you can certainly imagine that that could become crucial in these positions. So in general, white still has a healthy attack here, even if h6 was played. However, knight ce7 was played instead. Queen c2 was played, going for a very obvious threat. Knight g6. Now, instead of knight to g6, you could have played f5, but notice that after queen e2, there's actually simply a fork in this position, and you're losing a pawn. So for that reason, knight g6 was played, but now this allows a very stunning idea. So I would urge you to pause the video and try to figure out what did Fischer play here with the white pieces. This is a really cool idea. So in this position, the way that you should proceed is using your pawns. You have a lot of pieces at your disposal, but when you look concretely, there aren't great ways for them to get into the game. Rook e4 heading towards h4, sure, the knight can't take because of mate, but a move like h6 at some point will easily get rid of that threat. This bishop doesn't have any access points as the position currently stands, and so your pieces, they look good, but they aren't actually being able to help with the attack. What you need to look for is your pawns here, and immediately, hopefully, that takes you to the move h4 here, using this h-pawn as a lever into the position, as an avenue to attack. So h4 with the clear threat of going h5 in some position. You know, you can start with knight h7 and then h5. You can consider first going h5. In general, the tactical power of this position just got a lot stronger. And so after h4, the move knight f6 was played, desperately trying to stop h5. However, now getting rid of the f4 square. And so at some point, bishop f4 could become even more powerful and possible. And this is what I want you to remember when I talked about how you want to have two attacks. Well, now we clearly have an attack on the king side, but well, this bishop f4 idea is always lingering as well. Now in this position, this is perhaps the most beautiful moment of the game, the most surprising moment for me, because there exists a tactical blow that immediately wins the position, which looks kind of crazy because, well, black doesn't look terrible here. They have less space, but they have a good chunk of defenders here, and it doesn't look like you have an immediate win, but you do. So again, I'd recommend pausing the video. The move is knight h7 anyways. Now if the king takes, it becomes rather obvious why this is good. Here we have bishop f4, and again, the idea of two threats. The knight is pinned, we're winning the rook, and the attack continues after that, right? There's still a lot of pressure after that. But the surprising thing is, well, what about knight takes? The king is super safe. You still have good defenders here. What was the point? Well, the idea was now going h5. And when the knight moves, bishop f4, the same central idea of winning the rook here. For example, knight d7, bishop f4, and after the queen moves, you simply win the rook. So going back, black played the best move here, knight h4. The point is that after bishop f4, the queen can come back to d8, and in this position, if you were to take the rook, that would be a pretty serious inaccuracy because of knight takes g2, and after king takes g2, bishop b7, and oh no, black is winning back some of the material, and we're still better, but it will take a lot more to prove our advantage. Of course, Fischer saw this idea and instead played g takes h4 here, which wins on the spot. There's still the pressure on the rook. The rook is actually trapped. And after rook b7 here, h6. We don't even care about the rook. And he actually made a note here that, well, I could have taken the rook, but he thought that there was something better. And that makes a lot of sense. You have the two bishops, you have the queen, you have this idea of going h6 and opening up the position, and this rook really isn't going anywhere. If black were to spend the time to save the rook, that is valuable tempo, and that would actually likely result in a crushing, attack on the board. And so after rook b7, h6 was played, and here queen takes h4, h takes on g7, and king takes g7, which is a bit of a strange move. Rook moving the rook, for example, d8 here makes a lot more sense to me. One of the nice defensive ideas is using your opponent's pawns as shelter, because now this pawn can't be captured. So any attack on the g-file is no longer possible. And so that is one very common defensive technique. Instead, black thought that they could take here and maybe counterattack, but the issue is with the two bishops, that's just not possible. And after rook e4, there's all sorts of threats. Bishop h6, actually. Queen takes h6, so bishop e5 here. Important detail, winning the queen. So instead, queen to h5 was played, but unfortunately, after the very casual rook e3, the attack is continuing, right? There's going to be threats For example, if black does nothing, let's say rook d7, right? Let's say they try to save the rook, like I was saying earlier. Well, unfortunately now after rook h3, queen f5, we can go bishop h6 check, for example. And after bishop h6, if the king comes to h8, we can even trade into the endgame with this, and we win the rook in the end. And if the king comes to g8, we have even better with this sort of idea. We're winning even more material in this position. The best is to come to f6, but after rook f3, it's pretty clear that this loses as well. So rook d7, there's just no time for it. Instead, f5 was played, trying to shut the queen off, but unfortunately it's a little too late, because rook h3, queen e8, and the attack is nowhere near over. Bishop e5, and knight f6 was played. Here, this is another moment maybe I'd urge you to pause and try to find a nice idea. Essentially, the king is weak, you want to get your queen involved, so you get the queen involved. Queen d2, right? Very logical. Even queen c1 maybe, but why would you shut the rook in? So queen d2, very logical. Getting into g5, where the effects of that would be very deadly. King f7 trying to run away from the attack, but queen g5 anyways. And after queen e7 here, there was a nice idea, a simplifying idea. You simply take the knight. And after queen takes, rook to h7 check, and king moves, we simply take, and in the end of all of this, we remain up a lot of material. In fact, a full rook worth of material. Instead, just for a moment, black took the rook here, but after bishop c6, they resigned because we're still up a ton of material, and after bishop d7, queen e6, for example, and it's completely winning. I mean, this is a non-starter for black. So, hopefully you enjoyed this first game. I thought it was a very brilliant representation of, first of all, dealing with a very passive setup, right? This d6, b6 sort of passivity allowed for this c3, d4, e5 launch, which in turn created the kingside attack. Also this idea of having 2 points of attack, this bishop f4 idea, and also this h4, knight g5, queen c2 threats was very strong. And so being able to attack in a holistic and complete manner is a really important skill. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on more games just like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.